Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and we're now well into the carnival season, and on Tuesday I will almost certainly have another carnival recipe for you. But for today I'm going to continue a little bit more in the general realm of language, but I'm going to look specifically at counting. And this is actually more interesting than you might think certainly if you're only an English speaker and you know how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's interesting is that there are different ways to count. There are different ways to count in different languages, but there's also different ways to count in English. And there's also ways of counting that don't involve language, such as counting on your fingers, and that is also more complicated than you might think. And I'd like to get into all of that after my introduction. Now, certainly we count arithmetically in tens. Our base unit for our system of counting is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in the first column, and then when you get to 10 you bump over into the next column so that it's 1 in the tens column and 0 in the ones column. Then you go up to 9 again, and then you click over to 2, and then when you get all the way up to 9 in the tens column, then you click over to 1 in the hundreds column, and so on. So that all of the columns in our counting system are multiples of 10, 100, 1000, and so on. But there are many other counting systems, and the ones I want to look at are counting in twos, which is binary arithmetic, counting in fives, which you wouldn't think is normal, but it is in many different ways of counting, and 12s. I'll stop at 12 because we could go on. Well, I might touch on 20 as well. Now, let's just think about language for a minute in terms of 12 and 20. In the English language, we have words for 12 and 20 besides 12 and 20. 12 is a dozen, and 20 is a score. So President Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address began 467, So until relatively recently, you could say something like 2 score, 4 score, or whatever, and it made sense to people. You can also say, oh, I need 2 dozen eggs. And that means 24. You understand that. Here's the interesting thing about 12s. It doesn't occur so much in other currencies, but in old British currency, before it changed to decimals, was based on 12 and 20. There were 12 pence in a shilling and 20 shillings in a pound. And so when I studied arithmetic in primary school, I had to learn how to add up lots of numbers, like so and so cost 5 shillings and sixpence, and this costs 10 and twopence, and this costs £1 3 and 4 pence. You have to add it all up, and when you add the pence columns up, every time you get to 12 you carry over into the shillings column, and the shillings column, every time you get to 20 you carry over into the pounds column. It's one of the reasons that they changed to the decimal system, because it's so hard. But here's the thing about shillings and dozens. It makes just as much sense as the decimal system does when it comes to money. Now let's suppose an egg in a shop costs 3 pence. Well, how much does a dozen cost? 3 shillings, because it's 12 eggs, 12 pence in 1 shilling, so 3 pence for 1 egg, so 3 shillings for 12 eggs. And in England, still to this day, when you buy eggs, you buy them by the dozen or by the half dozen, which rather confused me when I moved to Asia, because here in Asia, at least in the countries that I've lived, in Myanmar, Cambodia and China, they sell eggs by the 10, which helps with decimal currency in the same way that dozens helps with the old currency in Britain. So, but notice that 12 and 20 used to crop up on a routine basis in that currency, and they crop up in a lot of places. And I don't quite know why, because we've got 10 fingers. So when we're counting, we can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then another 2 more fingers for 12. So like tens make a lot of sense when it comes to our cognition of what a whole group looks like. But here's the thing. If you have 10 marbles scattered on a floor or on a table, you cannot just look at them and say, oh, there's 10, unless they're organized in a particular way. One way that they're organized, and you know there are 10, is if there's 2 groups of 5. Because 5 is one of the highest numbers that is easily recognizable. Like if you see 3 pebbles on the floor, you immediately know it's 3. You don't have to say, oh, it's 1, 2, 3. You know it's 3, and 4 and 5. 5 is just about as high as you can go without having to start to create some order. And you find 5s cropping up in all kinds of places. For example, you're probably familiar with, I don't know, Castaway, let's say, who's trying to calculate the date, and so like some point early on in being cast away, he takes a rock and he chisels 1 mark on the cave wall. Next day he carves a 2nd mark, next cut a 3rd mark, next 4th mark, and at 4 he then finishes 5 by striking through the other 4. And that pattern is recognizable as 5, and so then he can start again, and that is much easier to recognize than just a bunch of scratches on the, so if you end up with 100 scratches, well, you've still got 25s, but it's a lot easier to count them than to count all the way from 1 to 100 separate scratches. So often when we're making tallies, that's what we do. 1, 2, 3, 4 cross is 5. Now, this is where, to me, it gets interesting. In England in the 19th century, I think maybe even a little bit into the 20th century, but certainly in the 19th century, shepherds in various parts of the country used to have their own special way of counting their sheep. and they would count them if, for example, they took them out somewhere into a pasture and then brought them back into the fold at night, and they'd count them on the way out to see how many they had, and then they'd count them on the way back to make sure that they hadn't lost one on the way. And they used a counting system that is based on fives, and also on tens, and also on 20. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. And they used words that seem to come from various forms of what's known as Brythonic Celtic, which is either Welsh or Cornish. Now, one of them goes like this, and you can see the fives cropping up. It starts off yan, tan, tethera, nethera, pimp. So the first two rhyme, the second two are different and also rhyme, and then the fifth one is like a sticking point. Then it goes on to slethera, lethera, movera, tovera, dick. So every five there's an individual discrete word. And then when you get to dick, that's 10, then it starts again. So yan is 1, so yanadic is 1 and 10. So yanadic, tanadic, tetheridic, methodic, and then bumfit. So again, it's another 5. And then they start again. Yan bumfit, tan bumfit, all the way to 20. And at 20, it stops. So technically speaking, you could say that it's a base 20 counting system. At 20, the shepherd put a little stone in his pocket and then started again. And so all he had to do, if he ended up, let's say he ended up with 3 stones in his pocket and he finished on pimp, that's 5. So he had 3 stones in his pocket, that's 60 plus 5, 65. I mean, I know, crazy, crazy system, but it's based on 5s and 20 as its base units, and works. Now, I'm not sure how common these kinds of counting systems were, but I've looked on the internet quite a bit for the last few years off and on, and discovered that there are at least 10 different systems of counting like that for counting sheep that are found all throughout England, all the way from Sussex all the way up to Yorkshire and everywhere in between. So there seems to be something, maybe you call it fraternal about it, that because it's only used for counting sheep. I don't think these shepherds, when they went home and they had to count something else, count their money, certainly they didn't use that system. It was only used for counting sheep. And I thought it was just really quirky. And particularly I thought it was quirky because it was based on 5s, although I realize that 5 is a convenient whole set like the fingers on a hand. And then I learned how to count in Khmer, the language of Cambodia. And one of the small pieces of advice I will give you, that if you start learning a language because you're living in a new country, it's really a good idea to start learning how to count first, because that way you can go to a market or a shop and figure out how much something costs simply by knowing the numbers. Now Khmer is based on 5s of all things. It starts off moi, that's 1, moi, bi, bai, boen, pram. Pram is 5. 6 is pram moi, which is 5 plus 1. Pram. So you start with moi, bi, bai, boen, pram, and then you go pram moi, pram bi, pram bai, pram boen, dob. So it's exactly the same as the English shepherd's counting system. And the only reason I can think of at all is that it's because we have 5 fingers. And so just like you will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then like, I don't know, do something like, you could hold a finger up here, you see, so you could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? So this represents the first 5, this represents the next 5, and then you can hold up 2 fingers, so you've got, and so it goes. That got me starting to think about counting on your fingers, and particularly the fingers of one hand. And you may think that the fingers of one hand will allow you to count to 5. Wrong. When I lived in China, I learned the method of counting to 10 on one hand. And you start, and it's important where you start, although I'm not quite sure why. You start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have to change your symbolism. So 6, 7, like that, 7, 8, 9, and 10's a little bit difficult. Some people do it this way, some people do it this way, and some people use both hands, do it this way, because this looks exactly like the Chinese character for 10. So there you are, you can count to 10 on one hand. But you can do even better than that. And this is what my son used to do. I don't think he does it anymore. You can count in binary on one hand, and then you get all the way to 16. Now this is a little bit difficult, and it's also going to be a little bit difficult to show. But if you know about binary number systems, you know that it's 1, and then this, instead of having a ones column and a tens column and a hundreds column and a thousands column, you've got multiples of 2, so it's 1s, 2s, 4s, 8s, 16s. And so you can count like this, and I'm not very good at it. I never was very good at it, and he was a lot better. But I'll get you started on it. So you start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You get the idea. Anyway, you can get all the way up to 16. If you use both hands, you can get up to 512. I mean, you have to know your binary arithmetic pretty well. But that's amazing that with 10 fingers, you can get up to 512. Now, you can also do certain kinds of multiplication and division on your fingers, but I'm not going to go there. But I am going to talk a little bit about multiplication. When I started in the 3rd grade in South Australia, we spent the whole year learning our multiplication tables. Now, one of the curious questions is why we went from multiplication by 2 all the way up to multiplication by 12. There's no real need to go to 12, you can stop at 10. But for us, in the days of old money, the Australian money was pretty much identical with the British money. We had 12 pence in a shilling, and so multiplying by 12 or dozens was important, and so we went all the way up to 12. Now here's my question. If you have to count by a certain number, which numbers work easily and which ones don't? When I started in the 3rd grade, we didn't have to do the 2 times table or the 5 times table, because we already knew how to count by 2s and by 5s. There's that magic number 5 again. And you can do it quite easily. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's very easy. And same with fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, because it just loops around between 5 and the 10s over and over and over. It's a 5 and a 10, and then another 5, and then another 10, so 5 and then 10, and then 5 and 10, and then 20, and then 20 and 5, and so on. It's very, very easy. Counting by other numbers can be a bit excruciating. I mean, I still know all my tables. It's amazing. I'm nearly 70 years old, and I started learning them when I was 5, and I still know them. That's the advantage of long-term memory, I guess. There's a couple I get still confused about, and have done ever since I was a little boy. 6 5s and 7 5s I always get mixed up. I always wanted to say 6 5s are 35. I don't know why, it just sounded really good. I got a lot of red crosses on my arithmetic book for getting that wrong. I still get it wrong. But counting by other numbers can be painful, but there's a little trick to that actually makes it very easy. That's counting by 9s, because 9 is just 1 less than 10. So we can count by 10s. I forgot to mention 10s in the multiplication tables. Of course, we knew them as well. But 9s is really easy, because what you do, you go 9, next one is double 9 is 18. So you've got a 1 and an 8, and then you subtract 1 from the units and add 1 to the 10s, and you just keep going up like that. So it's 9, 18, take 8, take 1, and that's 7, and add 1, that's 2, so that's 27. So 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, and so on. So that one's not so bad. Counting by 8s I find a bit hard. Counting by 7s I found virtually impossible. Now, what about these really weird systems, like 60? Why does 60 occur so often? Why have we got 60 seconds in a minute? Why are there 60 minutes in an hour? Why are there 360 degrees in a circle? Well, this has to do with the fact that the ancient Babylonians had a system based on 60s. I have no idea why, but for some reason or other we find it convenient, and there's no way around it. Napoleon tried to decimalize everything. Well, not him, but his mathematical advisors did. He didn't like the fact that months came in 12s. So there's 12 again. So he devised a calendar that had 10 months in the year. So as it happens, it doesn't matter whether you have 10, 9, 14, 12, 13, whatever number you've got, the number of days in the year, 365 and a little bit, is not divisible by any integer. So there's always going to be something left over somewhere. So he tried to have a 10-month calendar, and he also tried to have a clock based on hundreds, or tens and hundreds. And people didn't like it. It just didn't work. It didn't catch on. I think it probably lasted a little while during Napoleon's reign. As soon as he was gone, that system was ditched, and the old cumbersome system of 12 months and 60 minutes in an hour and 24 hours in a day. If we had 20 hours in a day, if we divided the day up into tens, 10 for the first half of the day and 10 for the second half of the day, then everything would fit together. All of our mathematical equations would fit together with the decimal system of liters and meters and so on and so forth. But it didn't work. And here's the question I want to leave you with. Why didn't it work? Why are we happier counting our time in either 60s or 24s and our months in 12s? What is it about that somehow satisfies us? Is it just habit? I don't think so. I think there's something else there, something deeper that I don't really understand, that is just comfortable to us. All right, well, that's a little start on numbers and the way we use them. And I'll get back to my cooking on Tuesday. And meanwhile, as always, please tell your friends, please, 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 please like and subscribe. And I'll give you your cooking lesson, Carnival Cooking, on Tuesday.